data democratization, like getting data into the hands of as much people as possible is something you're really passionate about. Post migration, this was like one of the main reasons for doing this, right? Like
Mhm.
getting better data and activating that and giving other folks like the tools to do that. Let's chat about like the customer data picture after the migration and now like 1 year into it. I know SoundCloud uses BigQuery as the data
Mhm.
warehouse. What processes or guardrails do you think were helpful that you put in place that let marketers go a bit crazy or run their own segmentation lists and campaigns on top of BigQuery pushed into MoEngage? Did that kind of introduce risks at first or like reduce tech debt? Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so something I didn't say explicitly, but when we moved on to MoEngage, we left HTML behind and we now use a drag and drop editor. So when you think about that, it opens up the playing field tremendously because now you don't need to know HTML to be able to craft a message. So guardrails. So we actually have people who are not part of lifecycle who will go in and write messages. However, the lifecycle team is the one who activates them. So
Mm.
that allows us to have someone who knows deeply the system to be able to say, okay, yeah, this looks good. I'm going to send it live. Oh, wait a minute, this audience isn't quite right, or we need to add this, and they can do all of that. So that's essentially the guardrails that we have in place. Is the drag and drop editor truly opened it up. So now knowing HTML is not a blocker. Anyone can use our drag and drop editor to craft an email, but we still have people who know how things are going to work. Also, like what else is out there, and are we going to have, are we going to have too many things going on? We have though that level of expertise that is the one actually launching. So that's sort of what we've done to help that piece of it. I think from a data perspective, I mean, I was looking in preparation for this. I was looking to see how many people we had in MoEngage, and we have probably, I think it was like 135 people in MoEngage. And
Wow.
again, SoundCloud is like 425 people. So obviously we don't have 135 people on our CRM team. These are folks coming from all over the place. So these are
Huh.
data engineers in there. These are people going in there to look at analytics, to see what's all sorts of things, right? So, but again, that's sort of like our beginning of our conversation. MoEngage, but this whole customer engagement platform is it's a part of the product,
Mm.
and lots of different people have interests and are stakeholders and are using it, and it could be all sorts of stuff. So if I think about data democratization, yes, we feed everything into BigQuery. So, and this is actually kind of interesting too. And when you think about data, yes, we have our customer engagement platform, but I also manage our performance marketing team, our marketing analytics team. I deal with SEO. So lots of data everywhere. So something that we shifted to, and actually AppsFlyer was the first one we went live with this approach, but we did the same thing with MoEngage. We essentially get all of our events using server to server. So we have a forked version of like open source segment code that we're using to get events. So we have that. It feeds all our events into BigQuery, and then we use HighTouch on top of BigQuery to send those events. So that's sort of the process we're moving towards. AppsFlyer was sort of the first because AppsFlyer, we did build some custom integrations to send our events from BigQuery out to AppsFlyer, but we're probably going to be migrating that to HighTouch in the upcoming months. But that said, I mean, everything is going to BigQuery. That's our source of truth. And then we're sending it out to all the different platforms. So we're not using like the native integrations for SDKs, right? So we have the minimums, like I need to have an SDK in my app to get the MoEngage user ID, but all my events are coming from BigQuery. And I know I talked about in the beginning, trying to use out of the box as much as possible. Well, these tools allow us to do this. I mean, it's just a different way of doing an implementation. It's not super custom where like MoEngage is like, yeah, you could do that, but you're crazy. It was, I mean, it was something that we could do, but it also, not that I'm trying to switch vendors, but it makes it easier because all of our data is kind of handled the same way and being pushed out to all of our platforms. So like AppsFlyer, MoEngage, GA4, sort of in the same way. So it makes life easier.
Can I ask a quick question about like audience
Mhm.
selection and audience building? So it's like the audience is in BigQuery, and then what do marketers and the other 135 people that use the tool, like how do they select Like what tool do they use to actually select the audience for these messages?
So that's a great question. And when I think audiences, so yes, I'm managing a Martech stack, but the other hat I wear on a daily basis is our performance marketing team. So audiences in both places, right? So if we're talking about MoEngage, we have a couple things going on. So one, we are definitely using MoEngage's some segmentation capabilities to create audiences there. So we definitely do that. So actually, MoEngage built something called warehouse segments. We were like the beta, like I don't know, development candidate for that. I remember during our sales pitches, our CPO at the time was like, we don't want to move data anywhere. And the way we first got sort of to make that true was using HighTouch. So MoEngage actually introduced us to HighTouch. HighTouch is a reverse ETL tool. It sits on top of BigQuery, and MoEngage already had connectors with HighTouch, so that allowed us easily to be able to get data to MoEngage that we can act on, right? So that was sort of the first thing. But the second part of that was, and it initially was called Cloud Sync. MoEngage built warehouse segments, which allows us to go into the MoEngage UI, write SQL queries to build segments in our BigQuery and interact that way. So we actually, if I'm thinking about segmentation for messages, we actually do it both ways. We either use the MoEngage drag and drop editor or drag and drop tool to build a segment that way, or we will use SQL in the MoEngage UI to build segments that way. If I put my performance marketer hat on, we're actually moving towards a way where we are building audiences BigQuery itself and then using HighTouch to send it to my various endpoints. So like we're already sending audiences from BigQuery via HighTouch to like DV360, where I think Ben is there, TikTok. So my goal is I don't want to be building the same audience 5 times, right? That just adds all sorts of room for error. But with messaging and MoEngage being what it is, I don't want to add like artificial burden to say, well, you have to use the BigQuery HighTouch, methodology to create an audience. It just makes sense to create the audience natively in MoEngage. So I think that's always going to be the case. But outside of that, I want my audiences in BigQuery. I want to create them once, and then I want to be able to use something like HighTouch to send them wherever I need them. So that's sort of the 2 different ways I'm thinking about audiences.